Yes, Your Honor, and good morning again. I do have a couple of pretrial housekeeping matters I'd like to address to the court. Initially, it is my understanding that the witnesses today have been provided with a series of pre-marked exhibits. And while I understand that this is a bench trial, due to the unique nature of this forum, my plan is whenever I would enter an exhibit into evidence, I'm going to run through the foundational steps, just referring to those exhibits that the witnesses have been provided before publishing them to the share screen option. And I will then ask to publish via share screen after we have entered them into evidence.
Okay, that's fine. Unless there's no objection by Ms. Avey.
No objection.
Okay.
I'd also just like to draw the court's attention to a pretrial order that was entered, particularly at number 3 there, that just notes that several exhibits have been pre-admitted at this point. I will, of course, ask before I publish any of those, but just wanted to make the court aware that we do anticipate using a couple of those.
Okay.
And finally, Your Honor, my second chair, Mr. Brendan Olson, and I plan on having him use the share screen function throughout trial today. I just wanted to make sure that everything had been enabled. We'd had a couple errors between he and I with that in the practice rounds, and just wanted to make sure that we wouldn't occupy the court's time with that during direct examination.
And so you're wanting to do a trial right now or what?
No, just wanted to ask if everything had already been set up prior to trial today and make sure that we weren't going to have any of those roadblocks.
I believe so. We were able to do that last round without issue. So.
Thank you, Your Honor. With that, I have no further housekeeping matters before we do have one substantive motion to discuss with the court.
Okay, go ahead.
So we have one substantive motion. I'm happy to announce that we were able to meet with Ms. Avey prior to trial today via the phone and discuss it, and we were able to come to a stipulation. And that stipulation is that we are going to exclude any admission or reference to what has previously been marked as Exhibit 12. This was a handwritten note, supposedly written by the decedent in this case, Miss Rory Taylor, who was a student at Waco High School. The issue in this case is whether or not her coach was negligent in causing her death on the day of a soccer practice in September 7th. And an issue in this case is the amount of cocaine that...
This is the handwritten note, Exhibit 12?
Yes.
And you've stipulated, both of you, you're not going to reference or admit it?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor, because we understand that there's already been an admission of several testimony. The fact that there is cocaine in her system is not a disputed fact, and this would simply tarnish her character as a repeated drug user.
Okay.
And with that, the plaintiff has no further motions for the court.
Okay. Ms. Avey?
Yes, Your Honor. We do have 2 substantive matters to put on the record. We were able to meet and confer with opposing counsel before trial today, and we're able to resolve several substantive matters. We have stipulated that exhibit number 5 will be pre-admitted.
Photograph the practice field.
Oh, yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor,
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I wrote exhibit 5. I actually meant exhibit 15, the toxicology report.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so it was already pre-authenticated, but you agreed to, both of you, to admit.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we have also agreed to exclude any mention of a subsequent remedial measure that was taken by Coach Taylor the month after Miss Street's death. Coach Taylor has stated in her deposition that she added tents and Gatorades to practice after the death, and we will exclude any mention of that evidence in today's trial.
Okay.
And then our last stipulation was to exclude any mention of a prior incident that Coach Taylor had at her previous job with another student where they got into an altercation during a game. We have agreed to exclude that evidence as well in today's trial.
All right.
And finally, Your Honor, we have a few housekeeping matters to address with the court that opposing counsel didn't cover, though he did cover a very good majority of them. We would just like to ask the court that because we are in a unique jurisdiction and we do have evaluators outside the presence of the court in this bench trial, we will be asking for permission to publish exhibits for the court after they've been duly admitted and after foundation has been laid. And we will be using that language to signal that while we understand you have a copy of the exhibits, we do want to allow the evaluators to see them.
Sure.
And then at this time, Your Honor, we invoke the rule and we ask that our party representative, Coach Taylor, be allowed to stay in the courtroom.
Any objection to that?
Your Honor, I have no objection to that.
Okay, that'll be allowed.
And with that, Your Honor, the defense is ready for trial.
Okay. All right. Sorry, if you see, just housekeeping matter on my side, if you see me looking down, I'm also having to keep time. So every once in a while, I'm having to mess with the timer on my phone and keep up with all of that. So,
Yes.
All right. Given that, I will go ahead and call cause number 18-CV-001-20, Street versus Taylor. And are the plaintiffs ready?
Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff is ready to proceed.
Defense ready?
Yes.
All right. I just want to give you the option, given the way we're handling this, if either one of you want to sit while the other one is speaking, that's fine. If you, I don't know how you have your cameras set up. If you stand, I see Miss Avey, you're standing at a lectern. I don't know for sure, but if you want to sit, do you know, will you remain on camera?
Yes, Your Honor, I do have a setup so that I can switch the camera to a sitting position.
Okay, so during a direct and cross, if you want to remain seated while objecting, that's fine. Given the setup of this, I know that can be awkward if having to switch between camera angles and all of that. So feel free if you are sitting and you have an objection to remain seated.
Yes, Your Honor.
Certainly, Your Honor.
All right. Okay, Mr. Minecoat, you may begin with opening whenever you're ready.
Something seemed different with Rory that day. Those are the fatal and fateful words of Coach Reese Taylor, the defendant, describing her observations of the star player that was about to die. But Coach Taylor didn't take action, didn't step in, didn't offer help. Just a few moments before 18-year-old Rory Street's collapse, convulsions, and tragic but preventable death, the harsh words of her high school soccer coach pierced the 105-degree Texas air. Come over here, and I'll show you how not special you are. Those were the words of the adult, the person responsible, the person that all her athletes feared. When a quick-tempered coach ignored warnings and safety practices in 105-degree heat, tragedy struck. Rory Street was a young star high school soccer player. But when she showed up for varsity practice in Waco, Texas on September 7th of 2018, Coach Taylor quickly noticed that something was different with Rory that day. Rory was a young, happy, healthy, athletic woman who showed up to her practices regularly. But when she started to miss wide open goals, started struggling to orient herself and find her position on her field, struggled with hearing and responding to the coach's criticisms, she wasn't asked what was wrong. She wasn't asked if she was okay. She wasn't given a break to recoup. Instead, her coach decided that she was misbehaving. She had an attitude. An attitude needs discipline. It was scorching hot that afternoon in Waco. Reese Taylor thought her star student athlete needed discipline on perceived attitude. So, Ms. Street was sent to perform a drill known as running Burma Hill. You're going to hear more about this later in trial today, but this is an intense cardio disciplinary drill. As an athletic trainer watched from yards away, another young soccer player, Aubrey Saracen, was also disciplined via the Burma Road drill. Ms. Saracen noticed that her close friend and longtime teammate was beginning to really struggle. Rory was sweating. she was beginning to look very pale. She even complained about feeling funny and having chest pains. But to Coach Taylor, the defendant, Rory appeared to still be dogging it, simply goofing off. So Coach Taylor decided it was time to discipline her in a way that no one on the team had ever seen before. She had the rest of the team line up in a single file line, 10 yards in front of Rory. She then instructed Rory to begin dribbling a ball back and forth, and the first person in line would charge at her and perform what's known as a slide tackle. This wasn't a drill. This was done to make a point. So, as Rory began dribbling, her first teammate charged at her and performed this slide tackle. She was knocked to the ground, but before she could orient herself, her coach was already on top of her, yanking her up, and the whole process started over again. Teammate would charge. She would be tackled to the ground, yanked back up. This happened over and over again. Charge, tackled to the ground, yanked back up, charge, tackled to the ground, yanked back up. This happened 15 times. But after that 15th slide tackle, Rory fell to the ground and began convulsing. She died under that Texas heat. An ambulance was called, but arrived too late. Rory never got back on the field again. Rory's loving mother, Jordan Street, has brought this wrongful death lawsuit. Like any parent, Jordan loved her child. They had a lot of wonderful shared experiences. They both loved soccer. From the time Jordan taught Rory to play, kicking that ball around in the backyard, the countless practices and soccer meets had been a bond that the two had shared. Miss Street never imagined that the sport they both loved so much would end up taking the life of her daughter. Never imagined that her daughter would die in the presence of her own coach. Miss Street's alleging that Coach Reese Taylor was negligent on September 7th, 2018, and it was this negligence which caused the death of Rory Street. As the plaintiff, we have a burden to prove to you beyond a preponderance of the evidence that those events are what transpired. And as the court knows, meaning that we must show that this was more likely than not. Care would have seen that the discipline being given out in that day was likely to lead to this tragedy. The question essentially boils down to, should a coach, the responsible adult in charge of over a dozen young athletes, die heat stroke or heat exhaustion of one of those players? You're going to hear a medical doctor's conclusion. Dr. Reagan McConaughey has been a doctor for over 25 years. He has several degrees, a doctorate in biology and chemistry. Dr. McConaughey specializes in cardiology, and after reviewing an autopsy report which found that Rory Street died of sudden cardiac arrest, Dr. McConaughey concluded that heat stroke caused this fatal condition. Dr. McConaughey found that it was the extreme and dangerous conditions Rory had been subjected to. Now, despite this tragedy, I expect that you will hear from Coach Taylor today. I expect that Coach Taylor will tell you they wouldn't have done anything differently. Instead, they will blame Rory's death on Rory. Expect that the defense is going to try and come up here and show you that what this all happened because at that autopsy report, 60 nanograms per milliliter of cocaine were found in Rory Street's system. Now, they've brought an expert here as well, an expert who concluded that those nominal amounts of cocaine, and Your Honor, those are not my words. Those are the words of the defense's own expert. This nominal amount of cocaine caused Rory's death. Not the 100-degree heat, not the actions of Coach Taylor, not the lacks of break and shade, but this small amount of cocaine. Pay attention to this expert's credentials. You'll see that while they are a forensic toxicologist, they are not a trained medical professional. They have no specialized training in heat stroke or heat exhaustion. And you're going to hear today that Rory had numerous symptoms consistent with heat exhaustion. Pale skin, weakness, disorientation, fatigue, convulsions. Rory Street had every single one of these symptoms before she passed away. And not only did Coach Taylor know better, she should have known better. She was trained on proper safety protocols for hot weather practices just 3 months before Rory's death. She knew, as did every other coach in the state of Texas, that hot weather practices require regular breaks. Hydration and rest are important. And when we say regular breaks, what we mean is that every 15 minutes there needs to be a break when the weather is over 100 degrees, as it was on that day. Yet 2 hours into a practice session, Rory Street had not been afforded a break or even offered a bottle of water. Something was wrong. Something was different about Rory Taylor that day. Coach Taylor didn't intervene when her star athlete was sweating profusely, disoriented, and really struggling. Instead, she turned to discipline. And that discipline, that negligence, caused Rory Street's death. At the end of trial, I'm going to walk through all the evidence we see and hear today. I'm going to ask you to find the one person responsible for this death. The coach who saw something was wrong and failed to act. We will ask you to hold Reese Taylor responsible. We'll ask you to find justice for a mother who lost her child and a young athlete who lost her life. Thank you.
Ms. Avey, whenever you're ready.
Your Honor, there's absolutely one thing that Mr. Meinkoff and I can agree on. What happened to Riley Street on September 7th, 2018 was a tragedy. It is something that nobody should ever have to suffer. But is although we agree on that one thing, there's just one thing we don't agree on, something that we can't agree on, and that's what actually caused Ms. Street's death that you just heard so much about. Because although the plaintiff just said that this was because of heat stroke and it was brought on by Coach Taylor's actions that day, what the evidence will actually show in this case is that Riley Street died because of drug use, because of drugs that were in her body during a 105-degree practice out in the heat. And Your Honor, that's just not Coach Reese Taylor's fault. Today, the issue for you to decide is whether Coach Taylor will be held responsible for Rory Street's own actions. So today, I'm going to stand before you and ask you to deliver the just verdict. Because under our system of justice, we don't hold someone responsible. We hold the right person responsible. And the right person in this case, it is not Coach Taylor. But before I go a little bit further, I do want to tell you a little bit more about Coach Taylor. And when she takes that witness stand, she'll get the opportunity to do so herself today. She'll tell you that she's been the coach at Waco High School of the women's soccer team for 6 years, but she's actually been a soccer coach for over 20 seasons at this point. And she'll be the first to tell you that over those 20 seasons, she's learned a thing or two. And one of the things that she has learned is that she's a tough coach. She likes to yell. That's the way she motivates. She expects all of the effort her players can give her, and she wants to win a thing or two along the way. But Coach Taylor will also be the first person to tell you that her players are just as important as that. that her players, coaching them, teaching them, and keeping them safe is what is truly important to her. But we are here today because despite Coach Taylor's best intentions, something went horribly wrong on her practice field on September 7th, 2018. And as Mr. Meinkoff just said, the plaintiff's mother believes that that's because of something that Coach Taylor did. But under this system of justice, the plaintiff can't just make accusations. They have to prove them. And today we are confident that they will fail to meet that burden, because instead the evidence will show two things. First, that Coach Taylor acted reasonably under the circumstances. And second, that it was Rory Street's own choices that caused her death that day. So let's talk about that first thing that the evidence will show, that Coach Taylor acted reasonably under the circumstances. Now, to understand that, we're going to have to go back to September 7th, 2018. Coach Taylor has just arrived at practice at the Waco High School soccer field, and it's hot. It's September, it is 3 or 4 p.m. in Waco, Texas. It is scorching. But the thing is Coach Taylor and her team, they're used to this weather. Some of these girls have been playing in it for 4 years on the team. So it's nothing new. It's nothing that phases them. So they start to scrimmage because that's what they decided they were going to do in practice that day. And of course, Coach Taylor started yelling because that's what she does. That's how she motivates her players. But as she's watching the scrimmage, she does start to notice that some players are giving more effort than other players. And the first player that she notices isn't totally there is Aubrey Saracen, a senior on her team. So she tells Aubrey to go out to Burma Road, and Aubrey goes. Now, as you just heard in the plaintiff's opening statement, Burma Road is a disciplinary action at Waco. But what he failed to tell you is that Burma Road has been in a tradition at Waco High School for over 35 years. Coach Taylor is not the first coach to assign someone to go to Burma Road. In fact, Coach Taylor herself, when she was a player at Waco High School, had to run it. So she knows exactly what kind of physical shape you need to be in to run Burma Road, and she knows exactly how much her players can take. Now, Burma Road is a difficult drill, but as Coach Taylor will tell you, when she takes the stand today, her players are in tip-top shape and they can handle it. And she would never push them further than they could go. But turns out that Aubrey's not the only one that day that's having some problems. Because as Coach Taylor looks out onto the field, she notices that Rory Street, who's her star soccer player, is missing passes. That she's not running towards the ball, that she's goofing off in the middle of practice. And although Rory is her star, Coach Taylor knows that you have to discipline every player the same way. You can't let one player get away with something when the other players don't. So she sends Rory out to Burma Road just like she did Aubrey. But a few minutes later, from about 40 yards away, Coach Taylor looks out to Burma Road and sees that, again, Rory's just not putting in the effort that Coach Taylor knows she normally puts in. So she calls her back, and she decides that since Burma Road isn't working for Rory that day, they're going to try something different. And it's at that point that Coach Taylor tries something that she's never done before. She decides that Rory's going to line up in the middle to do a slide tackle drill, and that the other team members are going to try to tackle the ball out from underneath her. Now, today you'll learn that slide tackling is very common in soccer. It's one of the main parts of the game, and that you always have to work on those drills in practice. But that's not to say that the drill that they were doing that day was normal. Coach Taylor will be the first one to admit that she'd never tried that before. But she'll also admit that when she works on slide tackling drills, she knows what the risks are. Broken bones, hurt shins, maybe a cleat to the hip. But seizures, convulsions, and death, that's not in her experience. So it's at that point, after the slide tackling drill has been going on, that Rory doesn't get back up. And Coach Taylor and her team experiences the worst nightmare that a coach could ever experience. Watching one of your students on the ground, dying in front of you, knowing that there is nothing that you can do to help them. And Coach Taylor is left to ask, why? Because she knows what Rory can do. And this isn't normal. Now, that brings me to the second thing that the evidence will show today, and that's that Rory's own choices caused her death. Today, you're going to have the opportunity to hear from an expert report that was written by an expert toxicologist, Spencer London. And when you read Mr. London's report, you'll see that Rory's cause of death was actually a sudden cardiac attack. So it was sudden, but it had to have a cause. And what Mr. London discovered when he went through the toxicology reports that were done on Rory Street after her death is that she had cocaine in her system at the time she died. And that cocaine in her system, it would have been there when she was at practice. And although Mr. Meinkoff did talk about that cocaine, what he left out that you'll hear about how cocaine affects someone's body is that it gives you hypothermia. And when you have hypothermia, your body can't regulate its temperature anymore. So when you're out in 105-degree heat, when you're working out, your body can't cool off. And that's what Mr. London's report will tell you happened to Rory that day. Because although all of those symptoms point towards heat stroke, they all point towards a cardiac episode induced by cocaine as well. All of Rory's symptoms, all of Rory's convulsions, all of Rory's seizures are all consistent with a heart attack by cocaine. But the other reason today that you will know for sure that Coach Taylor didn't cause this death is because the plaintiff has the burden to prove that it was proximately caused in this case, meaning that they have to prove that it was foreseeable. And none of this was foreseeable, Your Honor. There were no signs, despite what opposing counsel just said, that Rory was going to have a medical episode. There was a trainer out on that field who didn't see anything. There was a coach with 20 years of experience out on that field that didn't see anything. None of Rory's teammates saw anything, and the one that says she didn't say anything. But what is undisputed in this case, what is truly unforeseeable, is that no one knew that Rory Street had cocaine in her system that day. Her mother didn't know, her friends didn't know, and her coach certainly didn't know. And how is the coach supposed to predict that? How is the coach supposed to foresee that? That'll be the question that you have to answer in today's case. Your Honor, what happened to Rory Street was truly horrific. But the truth is, what happened to her wasn't Coach Reese Taylor's fault. And for that reason, I will stand before you at the end of this trial during closing argument and ask you to return the right verdict, the just verdict. A verdict finding Coach Taylor not liable.
All right, Mr. Minecott, are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, we would call Aubrey Saracen to the stand.
Okay, Ms. Saracen, if you could turn on your camera, please. Do we want to all agree that the witnesses have been sworn in?
I'm happy with that, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Ms. Saracen.
Good afternoon, Ms. Saracen. Would you please introduce yourself for the court and spell your last name for us?
Yes. Hi, my name is Aubrey Saracen. My last name is Saracen.
And Ms. Saracen, are you familiar with someone known as Rory Street?
I am.
How do you know Rory?
We played soccer together in high school. We were really close, actually, pretty good friends.
And are you two still very close?
I couldn't say that anymore. Unfortunately, she died on the soccer field.
All right, Ms. Saracen, I want to talk about that tragedy in just a moment, but first I'd like to talk about your relationship with Rory, how you knew her. And I'd like to start with a photograph. Would you please look at Exhibit 3 for me?
Sure.
And do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
It's a photo of Rory.
And is that a fair and accurate representation of what Rory looked like around the time of her death?
Yes.
All right, at this time, I would enter Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Any objection, Ms. A?
No objection.
Exhibit 3 is submitted.
Permission for my second chair, Mr. Olson, to publish this via the share screen function.
That's fine. Permission.
So, Ms. Saracen, how did you first meet Rory Street?
I met her on our first day of soccer practice, freshman year.
And now you mentioned you two are teammates. Where do you two attend school?
We went to Waco High together.
And what sport were you two teammates in?
In soccer.
And I'd like to talk a little bit now about Rory as a soccer player. How was Rory as a soccer player?
She was amazing. She was probably the best player on the field.
And now what about as a student or a person? Was she driven? Was she a partier? What kind of person was she?
She was a driven person. She always worked hard. It was 100% for her, never slacking.
All right, Ms. Saracen, this may be a difficult question, but I do need to ask you right out. Had you ever seen Rory taking any sort of illegal drugs before?
No, I never heard anything about that, or she never told me anything about it either, or even seen that.
All right, well, Ms. Saracen, I'd like to.
Objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
Submitted. You may publish it if you would like.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Olson, if we could please see that photo. All right, so Ms. Saracen, would you please tell us a little bit about this field? What is this blue box we're seeing there?
The blue box is where we would practice any kind of scrimmages or anything like that.
All right, and what's this this red box there just to the side of it?
The red box, that's where we would normally do Burma rows. But that's where I did Burma rows the day of the accident.
All right, and we'll discuss the day of the incident in just a moment. But I need to pause you here. Would you please explain for us who aren't familiar, what is Burma Road?
Sure. So Burma Road is a drill that Coach Taylor would have us do when she was trying to punish us for missing passes or anything like that. We would run 30 yards and then we would dribble the ball, which means kicking, and running with the ball for about 30 more yards, and then kick the ball into an open goal. And then we would crawl back 60 yards.
And how many times would you do this drill?
We usually did it for as long as Coach Taylor told us to.
And what sort of things, you mentioned that this was something that was used as like discipline. What sort of things would get you to run Burma Road?
Yeah, sure. It was a variety of things. I mean, sometimes it would be for missing a pass or, missing an open goal, or not playing defense well enough or something like that. School starts, and then we go on all the way to about November.
And are these practices all outdoors?
Yes.
All right. I'd like you to take a look at Exhibit 4 for me, please.
Sure. Okay.
And do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that?
It is a picture kind of sideways of the soccer field where we would practice.
All right. And is that a fair and accurate representation of what that field would look like in around these practice months?
Yes.
All right, Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence Exhibit 4, please.
Ms. Avey, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
It's admitted.
And Your Honor, permission for my second chair to publish this as well.
Sure.
So, Ms. Saracen, looking at this field, tell us a little bit about this. Where are we in relation to the school?
So the school is set in front where where the gates are. There's a tennis fields, and then after that, the rest of it is just the soccer field. But yeah, the soccer field is usually right behind the school.
All right, now you mentioned the rest of it is soccer field. Is there anything else we're missing that's not captured in this photo? Any trees, any buildings?
No, that's just about it.
And now I'd like to turn to the tragedy we were speaking about earlier. You mentioned Rory Street died on a soccer field in a soccer practice. Do you remember what day that was?
Yeah, I can never forget it. It was September 7th, 2018.
Right, and so walk us through that. About how long had you been practicing?
So we probably started around 3:15, 3:30, and I want to say we were probably there about an hour before these events started happening.
All right, and so you mentioned when stuff started happening. What were you doing when stuff started happening?
I was running Burma roads on the field, about 20 yards away.
About how long had you been running Burma Road for?
Probably about 15 minutes.
And so you mentioned stuff started happening. What did you perceive that started happening?
Well, when I was running Burma roads, I started hearing Coach Taylor yelling. And when I looked over, I noticed that she was yelling at Rory.
And Coach Taylor, that's Coach Reese Taylor?
Yes.
All right. And could you perceive what this yelling was about?
It seemed like apparently, according to Coach Taylor, Rory was playing sloppy, was out of position, missing passes, and not finishing wide open shots.
In your experience as a teammate, as a close friend playing with Rory Street, was that a normal performance for her?
Not at all. That was something I've never seen from her.
All right. So what happened after this yelling?
After that, Coach Taylor was basically so livid with Rory that she told her to go ahead and start running Burma roads with me.
And when you were running Burma Road with her, what did Rory look like to you?
She didn't look great at all. She was pale and she was kind of bending over and not running as hard as I've seen her done before.
Did she make any statements to you about her physical or mental condition that she was experiencing while you guys were running?
Yeah, she told me that she was feeling funny and that her chest was hurting.
Now, Ms. Saracen, I want to take a pause here and talk about the day that this practice is happening. You mentioned that this was on September 7th. What did it feel like that day?
It was hot, really hot. Could have been over 100 degrees, I'm sure.
Your Honor, at this time, I would ask that my co-counsel be able to publish what has previously been pre-admitted as Exhibit 21 pursuant to that court order.
That's fine.
So, Ms. Saracen, about what time did this practice start?
Practice started, well, a little bit after 3:30.
All right, Mr. Olson, if you'd scroll down on this exhibit to about that 3 o'clock time. Now, Ms. Saracen, you mentioned that this weather condition it felt really hot. Is that typical in Waco?
Yeah, it is. We get that type of heat all the time.
And do you remember how many breaks you had taken during that practice?
During that practice, I can't remember if we even took a break.
All right, Mr. Olson, you can take this exhibit down. So after you and Miss Street are running Burma Road together, what happens next?
Well, like I said, Rory was struggling, and she wasn't running as hard. Whenever Coach Taylor looked over, though, instead of stopping or anything like that, she just got even more mad at Rory.
And speculation.
Your Honor, this witness is hearing and perceiving this Coach Taylor shouting at Rory from across the field, and has furthermore been a student and a team member of Coach Taylor for years, and would certainly be able to interpret based on her perceptions whether or not the coach was angry or not.
You can go ahead and ask her what her perception was, but she is not allowed to testify as to what coach might have been thinking her.
Certainly, Your Honor. Ms. Saracen, you mentioned that Coach Taylor looked over. What was your perception of what was being done at that point?
Well, whenever Coach Taylor looked over to see Rory, she began yelling at her. And at this point, she was talking about, you can't practice with the crab street and you're lollygagging over there. I guess I think you're special. And she went on to tell her that she was going to show her how special she was.
And how did she do that?
Well, she stopped the team from scrimmaging while we were running Burma rows, and told the entire team to line up in a single file in the middle of the field. And this is the practice field. And after that, she had Rory come over and stand 10 yards away from the line, beginning of the line, and told the coach and then the coach rolled the ball to Rory and told her that she was to start dribbling the ball forward. And she told the rest of the team that they were going to run at Rory and try to steal the ball using a slide tackle.
And so
Excuse me.
Bless you. You mentioned using a slide tackle. Is that a common thing that you're aware of in soccer?
The slide tackle is a common technique that we do use for stealing the ball in games and such, yeah.
All right, well, what about this particular drill? Had you ever seen this before?
No, not like this, no.
What was Rory's condition as this slide tackling drill was happening?
She looked the same, maybe even paler. She almost looked lifeless even.
And what about Coach Taylor? What is Coach Taylor doing?
Coach Taylor is there commanding her to do the drill. And when she started the first drill, Rory, dribbled the ball and she got slide tackled and she fell to the ground. And Coach Taylor yanked her up and put her back into the starting line and got her ready for the second time.
And how long?
You skipped a little. What was your question again?
I'm sorry about that. How many times did this happen?
Rory went around for 15 times.
And what happened after that 15th time?
On the 15th time, when she fell, she didn't get back up. She started convulsing, and we knew then that that was it. So they called the ambulance, and by that time it was too late.
When was the next time you saw your friend?
That was the last time I saw her.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Savy, whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Saracen, you and Rory were very close.
Yes.
You'd actually known each other your whole lives.
That's right.
You played soccer together,
Yes.
went to school together.
Right.
You were always at her house.
Yeah,
So you knew her mom,
I did.
and you are hoping that her mom, the plaintiff in this case, that your testimony can actually help her today.
I'm just giving her what I've seen. It's not really much of a help or anything. Just telling what I know.
Well, you did agree to testify on her behalf today.
On her behalf?
I'm sorry, Ms. Saracen, maybe my question isn't clear. You are testifying for the plaintiff. The plaintiff did call you to the stand today. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Now, on the other hand, you don't like Coach Taylor very much.
That's true.
You actually played on Coach Taylor's soccer team for the last couple years.
That's right.
But in your senior year, you actually lost your starting position.
True.
You were only playing about half the time you've played before.
Right.
And the person you lost that position to was actually Coach Taylor's daughter.
Yes.
And that upset you.
It did.
In fact, you're still upset about it.
I wouldn't say that I'm still upset. It's buried under the bush or whatever.
Well, in your own words, you said that it was all crap just a few months ago in your deposition.
Right.
Because you thought you were a better player than her.
That's true.
Now, I do want to take you back to the date of September 7th, 2018. On that day, you were at your afternoon soccer practice. You said that on direct examination.
Yes.
And that day, Coach Taylor actually sent you to Burma Road.
Right.
And as you said on direct, Burma Road is a disciplinary tact that requires you to do a series of soccer skills.
Yeah.
You run,
Yes.
you dribble the soccer ball,
Yes.
you shoot a ball into the goal,
Yes.
and then you bear crawl back.
Yes.
And now that's a drill that Coach Taylor used relatively frequently, right?
Yes.
Now, you've been running Burma Road for about 15 minutes when Coach Taylor actually sent Rory over to Burma Road with you.
That's correct.
I just want to clear something up. While you've been on Burma Road for about 15 minutes, you weren't having any chest pains, right?
No.
You weren't complaining of pain, or
No.
you didn't tell anyone that you were starting to feel funny.
No.
When Rory came over and joined you, she'd only been there for just a few minutes when she started to tell you she was having chest pains
Right.
and that she was feeling funny.
Right.
Now, you were pretty close to Rory when she told you this, only a few feet away.
That's correct.
But Coach Taylor was pretty far away at that point.
20 yards, yeah.
And so, in your own words, you actually said that Coach Taylor was pretty far away in your deposition.
Yes.
At the time that, at that point, when Rory started to complain to you about pain, you never went to Coach Taylor and told her about that.
No.
You also never went to the trainer that was at practice with you that day and told her that.
No.
Rory, you didn't see Rory go tell Coach Taylor about any of this, right?
Right.
And you didn't see Rory go tell the trainer about any of this either, right?
Right.
Now, then after this happened, a few moments later, Rory was actually moved back to the scrimmage field.
Correct.
And that's when they started to do this slide tackle drill that you talked about on direct examination.
Yeah.
And so you said you would agree that slide tackling, that's a part of soccer.
That's what I said, yeah.
And you actually said also that they normally aren't very dangerous.
No.
I'm sorry, is that a no, they're not very dangerous?
Correct, they're not very dangerous.
And so when Rory started that drill though, you said that she still didn't look very good.
Right.
And at this point, you still didn't say anything to your coach.
I wasn't on the field with them. I was still doing Burma roads. I mean, she was closer to Coach Taylor than I was at this point. And so, yeah. And I could see from the practice field or from the place where I was running Burma roads that she was still not looking good.
Ms. Saracen, so just my question was if you went over at that point to go tell Coach Taylor that you didn't think she was looking good. And the answer to that question is no, you hadn't done that at that point. And you didn't see Rory go over and tell Coach Taylor that either?
No.
Now, as you said on direct examination, you blame Coach Taylor for what happened that day.
I don't think I said that in my direct, but I'm pretty sure I said it in my deposition, so yes.
I apologize. In the past, you've said that now you blame Coach Taylor for what happened.
Yes.
But you did send a text message to one of your friends the day after Rory died.
Right.
On September 8th, 2018.
Yes.
And in that text message, I'm actually going to refer you now, Ms. Saracen, to Exhibit 22, which you should have with you. Please let me know when you have it up and ready, and referring court and counsel to Exhibit 22, which has been pre-marked and for identification.
I have it up.
Ms. Saracen, you recognize this exhibit?
Yes.
It's a screenshot of the text messages that you sent the day after Rory died.
Yes.
And this is a fair and accurate depiction of those text messages.
Yes.
Your Honor, defense moves Exhibit 22 into evidence.
Your Honor, I would object to the admission of this piece of evidence under hearsay grounds.
Your Honor, we will not be using this for the truth of the matter asserted. In fact, we'll be using this for impeachment purposes. Today on the stand, Ms. Saracen has said that she could see symptoms that Rory Street was suffering from prior to her collapse, that it was clear, whereas in these text messages, she says it was very sudden and that it came out of nowhere. And this is to impeach those statements that she gave on direct examination.
Your Honor, if I may respond, that would be improper impeachment. These text messages make no reference to the symptoms Rory was experiencing leading up to her collapse, just the description of the actual collapse itself. Additionally, these text messages weren't written until a full day after the incident occurred.
Your Honor, that goes to weight, not admissibility. This is impeachment evidence.
I'm going to sustain. If you want to ask her about what she saw and thought afterwards, and if those differ, you can ask about that. But because I was just reviewing the exhibit myself, sorry, because that text message does not mention what she saw beforehand, any symptoms, I would tend to agree with Mr. Meinkoff, and I'll sustain that objection.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Saracen, you before Rory collapsed stated that you saw symptoms that she was suffering from, that she was pale.
Right.
And that she complained of chest pain.
Right.
And you'd agree then that, so is it your testimony today that her collapse came out of nowhere?
I guess not. I mean, I can't really, determine that. I mean, for me, it did come out of nowhere. It just, because, one thing she was doing it, slowing down, even though she was slowing down, it still was something that just I've never seen before happen. Maybe in hindsight, I probably saw that. Maybe, but on that day, it looked like it came out of nowhere. Yeah.
So you certainly didn't see it coming on that day?
No. I didn't see Coach Taylor pushing her 15 times coming either. So, there's that.
Ms. Saracen, I would just ask you to please only answer the questions that I'm asking. And right now, there was no question pending. However, I do have one for you now. And that's that since Rory died, you've actually learned that there were drugs found in her system.
Yes.
And that surprised you.
Yes.
And you'd never seen Rory use drugs before.
No.
You have no idea why Rory would be using drugs.
No.
But you had noticed that Rory was stressed out the week before she died.
Yes.
In fact, you said that she actually told you that her mom was putting a lot of pressure on her.
Yeah.
Pressure to play soccer well.
Yes.
Pressure to get a college scholarship.
Yes.
And in fact, Rory told you that she wished the season was over so that she could relax and become a normal student.
Your Honor, I would object on relevance grounds here. What this witness was told about Rory Street's perceived stress isn't something that the individual on notice in this case, Coach Taylor, would have been aware of.
Your Honor, this does go directly to notice because it shows lack of notice. Coach Taylor did not know what was going on in Rory's personal life that may have been causing her to ingest cocaine before practice, either as a stress reliever or to boost her performance so that she could perform at the level that her mother expected.
I'm going to sustain.
Yes, Your Honor. You said on direct examination that you couldn't remember if you had taken a break that day. Isn't that right? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
That's right.
Now, you said you couldn't remember if you'd even taken a break,
Correct.
but that means you also can't remember if you took one break
True.
or two breaks
Right.
or even three breaks.
Right.
Pass the witness.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Saracen, you were asked on cross-examination about the frequency of the use of Burma Road during Waco's soccer practices. How frequently was this slide tackle maneuver drill used?
I've never seen that drill before.
And from your perception, from what you could perceive about how close was Coach Taylor to Rory Street while that drill was happening?
She was a couple of feet at least. I mean, because she was right there administrating the drill. So.
And who else that day was subject to that slide tackle drill?
I don't understand the question.
So I'm sorry, let me rephrase that a little bit in case it was a little unclear. Who else had to have the stand and have the rest of the team have these slide tackles on them?
No one, it was just Rory.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross, Ms. Amy?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Saracen, may be excused. Mr. Monkoff, you want to call anyone else?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, we would call the unavailable witness, Miss Jordan Street. And there has been, as mentioned in the court order, a prior deposition taken that I intend to read portions of, having my second chair read the responses as if they were a live witness. We have provided opposing counsel with a copy of the intended portions we anticipated reading in. And for that purpose, there was one note that we wanted to bring to the court's attention on page 9, lines 6 through 8. We're actually redacting those as we read them. So there will be a point where my witness has been discussed with opposing counsel.
Sorry, you lagged there for a second, but it sounded like the redaction portions you've already discussed with opposing counsel.
Yes, Your Honor.
So can you publish then what you're going to be reading from so I can see it and make sure
Certainly.
for the record?
And Mr. Olson, would you be available to publish that? May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Beginning on page 2, line 6. Good morning. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Jordan Street.
Page 2, line 15. Do you have any children?
I did. My daughter, Rory.
Page 3, line 20. When did Rory start playing soccer?
Oh gosh, when he or she was little, 4 or 5 years, I went and signed her up and got her started with just being out and being athletic and being around other kids. But she took right to it and never looked back. Before you know it, I'm sorry, it's not letting me click to the next page. I apologize. Before you know, we were spending weekends driving all over Texas to soccer tournaments, and the next 12 or so years were just kind of a blur. Soccer tournaments, soccer practice, soccer camps, soccer everything.
Page 6, line 18. Was Rory a discipline problem?
No, not any more than other kids that age. I mean, she was a little wild and liked to have fun, but she wasn't some hippie smoking dope behind the school or some party animal who stayed out all night. Rory got in trouble a few times, and I got called by the principal a few times, but it was just normal teenager stuff, being late to class, goofing around, or missing some homework assignments. I was confident that she would graduate and would go on to college. I know that.
Page 7, line 8. Did Rory regularly visit her pediatrician?
At least once a year for a physical.
During any of those yearly physicals, were there any issues?
None. Rory had never any serious medical issues, just normal kid stuff.
Page 7, line 19. When you were playing soccer at Waco High, did you ever have to run Burma Road?
Hell yeah, we did. I remember doing that when we were dogging it, or if we weren't in the correct position or something. Coach would send us off to run Burma Road, but I'll tell you this, none of my coaches ever made me or any other kid keep going when it was obvious that we were exhausted. Discipline is one thing, but that is just dangerous.
Moving to page 9, line 3. And Your Honor, this portion of the response is where my witness will skip over lines 6 through 8. Is it important to teach slide tackling as a coach?
Yes, it is. But that isn't what happened here. This wasn't a drill to teach Rory how to slide tackle or defend against them. Rory knew how to slide tackle and how to avoid them. And all the time that I've played, coached, and watched soccer, I've never seen a drill like that. Not once.
Did you have any part in Coach Taylor being hired?
Yes, I was instrumental in getting Coach Taylor hired. Wish I hadn't been, but I was.
Why did you want Coach Taylor?
We wanted a winning coach. I wanted Rory to be coached by a winner. That's what we wanted, and we thought that Coach Taylor was the right person for that job. Looking back now, it was obviously a huge mistake on my part.
No further reading.
Okay. Ms. Avey, was there anything you wanted to read in from that deposition?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Mykoth, any other witnesses?
Sorry, Your Honor. At this time, the plaintiff has no further witnesses to call, and the plaintiff would rest.
Okay. Ms.
Your
Avey?
Honor. Yes, Your Honor. Then at this time, the defense would like to make a motion.
Okay. Go ahead.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense would make a motion pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure, Rule 50, for a judgment as a matter of law. Today, as Your Honor is aware, the plaintiff had the burden of proving by a preponderance of the evidence that a reasonable juror would find that there was a duty, a breach of that duty, and that there was proximate cause for an injury that Coach Taylor caused to Rory Street that resulted in her death. In this case, the plaintiff has been unable to establish that there was proximate cause, specifically that Coach Taylor's actions caused Rory's death, and that death was foreseeable.
Your Honor, if I may respond.
Go ahead.
Looking at the evidence in the light most favorable to the non-moving party, the plaintiffs in this case, a reasonable jury could easily conclude that by preponderance of the evidence, Coach Taylor was negligent and caused the death of Rory Street. We've heard that this was a coach who was driven to win at all costs, who frequently put her students through rigorous cardio activities and then subjected Rory Street to an unheard of discipline procedure, which involved repeated sliding and tackling to the ground, all of which taking place shortly after an intense cardio regimen under the 105-degree sun. Looking at all the facts that we've heard today, it is certainly reasonable that a reasonable jury could find the defendant negligent.
I'm going to deny the motion at this time. Ms. Avey, you can go ahead and present your defense.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Coach Reese Taylor to the stand.
Or Coach Taylor, if you could turn on your camera, please. May I proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself to the judge and tell us where you live.
Hi, I'm Reese Taylor and I live in Waco, Texas.
And how long have you lived here in Waco?
Oh, I've lived in Waco my whole life, except when I was in college. I grew up here, I've worked here.
And so did you go to high school here?
Yes, I did.
Where'd you go?
I went to Waco High School.
And you said you went to college. Where'd you go to college?
I went to college at Texas A&M University in College Station.
And did you get a degree while you were there?
Yes, I did.
What'd you get?
My degree is in physical education. I knew I wanted to be a coach, so that was the degree that I was informed would allow me to make that career decision.
Now, I'm so sorry, I dropped my pen. What do you do now, Coach Taylor?
I am the head coach of the varsity soccer team at Waco High School. I'm also a health teacher at the high school.
How long have you been the coach at Waco?
I have been the coach at Waco for 6 years now.
And have you, is that your only coaching experience?
No, it's not.
What other experience do you have?
I have been coaching for probably like 30 years. I've coached multiple different sports, basketball, softball, but I've done 20 seasons of soccer coaching.
Now, I want to ask you a couple questions about kind of generally being a coach. As a women's soccer coach, do you have to do anything to stay updated on the best possible coaching practices?
I mean, you don't have to, but most coaches do. It's very, very normal to communicate with other coaches, see what the trends are in the coaching world, go to conferences or meetings and just kind of learn how the practices are adapting and the different methods that other coaches are using.
And do you do that?
Yeah, I do.
And can you tell us a little about your experience doing that?
Yeah, sure. So I go to a conference at least once, usually once a year, just to meet with other coaches around the state and see what the coaching practices are in the state of Texas, learn any new drills or methods that those coaches are using, see if there's been any updates to the Texas standard that I need to know about, just generally those types of things.
When you go to these conferences and you get any recommendations, are they mandatory?
No, they're not.
So you don't have to implement them?
No, I don't. It's just general practice of what other people are doing.
I want to ask you a little bit about how you run your team and starting with how you do practices. How often does your team practice?
My team practices every day. After school, all of the girls come out to the field and we run our practices.
And what time do you start normally?
So our practices are immediately after the school day ends. We don't want to interfere with their education. So generally that's around 3:15 afternoon.
Now, is it normally a little hot around 3:15 p.m. in Waco?
I mean, it depends on the time of year. During August, September, I mean, yeah, it's warm. It's still summertime. But as we get into the fall months, it does cool off.
And why do you choose to practice in the heat?
Well, I mean, we don't have too much of a choice. It's summer in Texas. So even if we waited till evening, it's still going to be upper 90s. but also it's just, I mean, that's the environment that the girls are going to be playing in as well. So it conditions them to be able to get through the games that they're going to have to be playing in.
Now, are you the only adult that attends your practices?
No, I'm not.
Who else is there?
Well, so I'm a head coach, so I'm in every practice, and then I always have my trainer at practice as well. So us two are there no matter what. And then we also have an assistant coaching staff. You know, they're there when we need them for whatever purpose that they are serving.
And who is your trainer?
Jess Merriweather is my trainer.
I want to ask you about what kind of coach you are. How would you describe your coaching style?
I mean, I'm a tough coach. I'm not gonna water that down. I'm a very loud person in general, so I'm loud and I'm hard on my players, but I love my players. You know, I really do care about them. I want to see them succeed, and so I push them so that they can learn everything they're capable of. I mean, we're human. We don't know how much we can do, so I really want them to be able to come to that full ability that I know they are capable of.
Now, Coach Taylor, I want to direct your attention to the date of September 7th, 2018. Are you familiar with that date?
Yes, I am.
And did you have soccer practice that day?
Yes, we did.
About what time did you start?
I mean, it was a school day. It's after school, probably 3:15, 3:30.
And then can you tell us what happened during that practice starting at the very beginning?
Sure. So it was a scrimmage practice day. We had games coming up, so we were doing a full scrimmage, and one of the players was not following directions, doing what she was supposed to be doing. So I sent her to run Burma Road. She was running for a while, and another player, Rory, had also stopped listening and partaking as she was supposed to be in the scrimmage. So I sent her to run Burma Road as well.
Sorry, Coach Taylor, I'm going to stop you right there. You mentioned you sent the first player to Burma Road. Who was that player?
That was Aubrey Saracen.
And what kind of relationship did you and Aubrey Saracen have?
I mean, she was one of my players. So we had a good coach-player relationship for the majority of the time she played. She did have some issues with pushing herself and really being.
Your Honor, I would object to this answer on the grounds of relevance. The relationship with this particular player has no bearing on whether or not this witness was reasonable and or negligent under the circumstances in that day.
May I be heard, Your Honor? Your Honor, this goes to Ms. Saracen's bias in this case and her testimony and gives weight to that bias, which is always relevant.
To Ms. Saracen's bias?
Yes, her relationship with Coach Taylor, who is the defendant in this case, whereas Ms. Saracen is testifying on behalf of the plaintiff. And as Ms. Saracen already said, but now Coach Taylor is testifying to, their relationship was not a good one.
Okay, let's limit it to Coach Taylor's perception of the relationship.
Yes, Your Honor. Coach Taylor, you were telling us about your relationship with Ms. Saracen. What was your perception of your relationship with her?
Yeah, so it started out good. We started on good terms when she first became my player, and then I kind of realized that it was deteriorating as I was pushing Aubrey to try to be her full potential. And so when I had to make tough choices. So when I removed her from the starting roster because she wasn't playing to her full potential, it really deteriorated our relationship. It made it hard for us to be on the same page.
Now, you said that you sent Aubrey and then Rory to Burma Road. What is Burma Road?
So Burma Road is a discipline drill that we run, that Waco High School has run for years. I ran Burma Road when I played for Waco High School 30 years ago. And so it's just a drill that when you're not committing yourself to what is going on in practice, or you need to refocus, the coach sends you over there and you sprint 30 yards, dribble 30 yards, shoot the ball, and then bear crawl back, and you keep doing that.
Now, you said that you actually ran Burma Road when you were a student at Waco. So would it be fair to say that you're not the first coach at Waco High School to send a kid to Burma?
Yes, that's fair to say. I am definitely not the first.
And you said that you use it for disciplinary matters. Why is discipline on a team like yours important?
I mean, for every sports team, your players have to be disciplined. It's necessary to maintain focus and to be trained to run through plays and listen to criticism to get better in order to be an effective player for yourself and your teammates. So when you're not in that mindset, when you're choosing to practice in a manner that's not beneficial to the entire team, it's necessary for you to go refocus using this drill as a way of disciplining your mind to focus on the task at hand before you can return to the practice.
So when you sent your players to Burma Road, were you ever trying to push them beyond their physical capabilities?
Absolutely not.
And so when you sent Rory Street out to Burma Road, did you think that that was beyond her physical capabilities that day?
No, absolutely not. She'd run it before. So I thought it was within the realm.
So were you watching Rory and Aubrey while they were out there?
I mean, I could see them, but I wasn't just always watching them. I still had the rest of my girls on the field. We were running a scrimmage, so I had to be paying attention to everyone.
When you would glance over there, did you notice anything that was unusual?
I wouldn't say unusual. Aubrey and Rory weren't really doing the drill as they always did. They still seemed like they were goofing off and not taking it seriously. Which I guess that was different for Rory's character. She was a really strong player. And so it was weird to me that she was goofing off, but it wasn't abnormal for her physically.
So once you noticed them goofing off, did you take any additional action?
Yes, I did. I had Rory come run a different drill.
And what do you mean by that? What was your different drill?
So I had her do a slide tackling drill. It was a different drill than we had done before. We'd done slide tackling drills in the past, but this one was just something different. I was just trying to get her to really focus in and hone in her mindset on the task at hand.
And I want to be clear, you had never done this drill before.
No.
Do you normally practice slide tackles in a normal practice setting for a soccer team? I'm sorry if that was clear.
Slide tackles are something we practice.
And as a coach, in your experience over the last 20 seasons, what are the risk factors of practicing a slide tackling drill?
I mean, the risk factors of a slide tackling drill, I mean, any drill in soccer are going to be, broken bones, scratches, bruises, scrapes, occasionally maybe a concussion, you do head the ball, but never anything further than just those basic bumps and bruise type injuries.
So in your 20 years of experience, has anyone ever seized after doing a slide tackling drill?
No.
Has anyone ever died after doing a slide tackling drill?
No.
Did you ever expect with your years of experience that either of those two things could happen?
No, I never did.
So during this drill, we heard from Aubrey Saracen earlier today that she saw Rory struggling. Now, were you in the courtroom when she said that today?
Yes.
And did you see Rory struggling while trying to do this slide tackling drill?
I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by struggling. I mean, it's hard. It was a hard drill. I'm not going to say that it wasn't, but I didn't think she was physically faltering. I would never have put her in that position had I thought her physical capabilities weren't to that level. So, I mean, it was a hard drill. I'm not going to say she didn't think it was difficult, but no, I didn't think she was struggling in the way that Aubrey described it.
So at that point, did you think that Miss Street needed medical attention?
No, I did not.
You also said earlier that you have a trainer that's with you at each of those practices. Did the trainer ever come up to you and say that she thought Miss Street needed medical attention?
No, she did not.
Did any of Rory's teammates come up to you and say that they thought she needed medical attention?
No, none of them did.
Now, I want to ask you about something that we've heard today, which is a bit sensitive, but if you knew that Rory had drugs in her system at practice, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. Did you have any idea that any of your players that day had any drugs in their system?
No, I had no idea.
Did you know anything about Rory specifically having any drugs in her system that day?
No, I didn't know.
In your experience as a coach, would somebody coming to practice with drugs in their system be dangerous?
Yeah, I would say so.
Pass the witness, Your Honor. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Coach Taylor. I'd like to just jump right into it. That day, September 7th, in practice, you noticed something was different with Rory Street, right?
I mean, she wasn't practicing as hard as she usually did.
And that was unusual.
I mean, they're high schoolers, they have off days, so I guess.
Specifically, Rory had never been a discipline problem like this before.
Not really, no.
And you, as you mentioned on direct, have been a coach for 25 or more years now, right?
Yes, I have.
Been teaching at Waco for 6.
Yes,
You're trained and experienced in the coaching field.
yeah,
You're aware to look for differences like this.
yes,
And you understand the importance of keeping up to date on modern teaching techniques, right?
yes,
And to help you do that, as you mentioned on direct, you attend various coaching conferences throughout the state.
I do.
All right, well, I'd like to talk about some information that was covered at a meeting like that. I'd like you to turn to Exhibit 11, please.
Okay.
Are you seeing Exhibit 11?
Yes, I am.
Right now, those are slides from a presentation given during the annual meeting of the Texas High School Soccer Coaches Association, right?
Yes.
And you recognize those?
They look familiar.
And they look familiar because you actually attended this specific presentation, right?
I don't recall if it was this exact one. I think so, yes.
So you recall attending this conference.
Yeah.
And this is a true and correct copy of those slides that were presented to you.
I mean, I can't say that for sure. I didn't make the slides. I don't know if this is exactly what they were. I can't say that.
But these are the slides that were presented at that meeting.
I mean, they have the same color background and they have the high school meeting thing on the front, but like, I can't tell you that the information contained in them is exactly what they presented at the meeting.
Coach Taylor, you remember giving a previous statement in today's case, right?
Yes.
And in that previous statement, you were asked to look at what had been marked as Exhibit 11.
Possibly, yeah.
And in that statement, you were sworn under oath.
Yes.
You were accurate.
I would hope so, yeah.
You were truthful.
Yep.
You were complete.
Yeah.
So I'd like you to turn to your previous statement now, please.
Okay.
I'd like to direct your attention specifically to page 12, line 21.
Okay.
And I'd like you to read silently with me while I read aloud. I'm showing you what has been marked as Exhibit 11. Do you recognize this? I do. And what is it? These are slides from a PowerPoint presentation that was given during the annual meeting of the Texas High School Soccer Coaches Association. Did you attend that meeting where these slides were presented? I did. And is Exhibit 11 a true and correct copy of the slides that were presented at that meeting you attended? Yes, they are. I read that correctly?
Yep, you did.
Your Honor, I'd like to move what has previously been marked as Exhibit 11 into evidence.
Objection, hearsay.
Your Honor, if I may respond.
And-
We would not be offering these slides for the truth of the matter asserted, rather the effect that they had on this witness, Coach Taylor, specifically as it goes to her knowledge. As the court is aware, the standard here is what a reasonable person would do under these circumstances. These slides demonstrate that at one of these coaching conferences this witness attended just a couple months prior to the incident, she was made aware of safety precautions that should be implemented during any practices in high degree weather, and these safety practices were not implemented.
I'm going to overrule. I'll admit it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Exhibit 11 is admitted. You may publish if you would like.
Yes, Mr. Olson, if you would please toss those slides up on the screen. So, Ms. Taylor, I'd like to direct your attention to the second slide in this presentation. And Mr. Olson, if you'll please scroll to that second slide. Now, looking at this second slide, there's a heading here for temperatures above 96 degrees, right?
Yes.
And those are the temperatures you were referencing earlier that would happen later at the night in Waco.
Yeah.
And this slide says that there must be a 5-minute break every 30 minutes, right?
That's what it says.
So for an hour of practice, that's 2 5-minute breaks.
Yes.
And the next heading there is when the temperature is over 100 degrees, correct?
Yes, it is.
And this slide reads that when the temperature is over 100 degrees, there must be a break every 15 minutes.
That's what it says.
So that would be 4 breaks for every hour of practice.
Yeah.
It also recommends that these rests should happen in shade if possible.
Yes.
But on September 7th specifically, you didn't have shade available to your players, is that right?
I mean, the field was not shaded, no, but I don't control that.
And this also says that practice is not to exceed 2 hours of total outdoor time.
Yes.
All right, well, and what was happening while this practice was going on. You began your practice at about 3:15 or 3:30, right?
Your Honor, he froze.
Mr. Meinkoff, you froze there right after you were talking about the exhibit. If you could repeat yourself.
Yes, apologies, Your Honor. I'd like to move now and talk about what was happening to Miss Street during this practice. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, now you began that practice on September 7th at about 3:15 or 3:30, right?
Yes.
Now you mentioned on direct that, you didn't really have much choice because even later at night, Waco can still be about 96 degrees. Is that right?
Yes.
But to be clear, you chose not to have the practices at night. You chose to have them at 3 o'clock.
Well, I had them directly after school. We're dealing with students here, and it's very inconvenient to ask parents to bring their students back to a high school at 7, 8, or 9 p.m. So we're doing this as most teams do in the practice of the school.
And in addition to the convenience of it, an advantage for you was the conditioning that you mentioned, right?
I mean, yes, they're going to be playing games in heat, so it's the normal circumstances scenario of the game.
All right. And sitting here today, you're aware that it was about 103 degrees at practice time.
Yes.
And this is when you started noticing Rory Street was acting different, right?
Goofing off, yes.
Well, by goofing off, you mean missing easy passes,
Yes.
not really finding her position on the field,
Yeah.
not listening or responding to your criticisms.
Correct.
And this was unusual for Miss Street.
Sure.
But you didn't ask Miss Street what was wrong.
No.
Instead, you sent her to run laps at Burma Road, right?
As we do with all players who act in this manner.
All right, well, I'd like to talk about something you don't do with all players who act in this manner, though. Now, you mentioned that as she was running around Burma Road, you thought that she was still not responding well.
Correct.
And again, you didn't ask why Miss Street wasn't performing to her maximum.
Correct.
Instead, you decided that you were going to give her some discipline.
Yes.
And you had her return to the scrimmage field and the other players line up for a slide tackling drill, right?
Yes, I did.
Now, I want to be clear here because you mentioned this on direct a little bit, but this was the first time you had ever implemented this particular side tackling scrimmage, right?
This particular drill, yes.
And this was immediately after Miss Street had been running Burma Road.
Yes.
And in that discipline drill, you had 14 or 15 students perform slide tackles on Miss Street, right?
Something like that.
And you didn't pause in between each of these tackles to let Miss Street go get water.
It was a continuous drill.
And it looked like to you that Miss Street was struggling.
With the drill, not physically.
Well, I'm confused. If she was struggling with the drill, but not physically, like you saw her looking like she was struggling.
With the drill.
So she looked like she was struggling.
To perform what the drill required, yes, she didn't look like she was physically incapable of performing the drill.
With what the drill required was having students repeatedly run up and slide tackle at, right?
Yes.
All right. And now after about that 14th or 15th slide tackle, the Street fell to the ground.
She did.
And she never got back up.
She did not.
And looking back at it now, it's your claim that you didn't do anything improper, right?
Correct.
You wouldn't do anything different.
No.
You heard testimony today, as you mentioned on direct, from Mr. Saracen about what he observed on Miss Street as they were running Burma Road together.
Yeah.
Now, while you were performing this slide tackling drill, you're right there on the sidelines next to this drill.
I mean, I don't know what right there on this, like it's a field. So I am on the sideline, yes, but the players are still on the field.
And you never made any calls for medical attention.
I didn't think it was necessary.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Coach Taylor, you were just asked a lot about how Rory Street's behavior was different on September 7th, 2018. How often on your team did Rory practice in above 100-degree weather?
Every single day in August and September.
And how old was Rory?
I don't recall exactly, 17 or 18.
I'm sorry, I meant what grade was Rory in? Was she a senior?
Yes, she was.
And so how long had she been on your team?
4 years.
And so for 4 years, every September and October, she'd practice every day in 100-degree weather. Did she ever seize on any of those days?
No, she did not.
To your knowledge, what was different about Rory on that day?
I mean, to my knowledge, she was just goofing off with her friends. And she was in her senior season. She was just kind of slacking off. I don't really, that was the only thing I perceived that was different from her.
Thank you, Coach Taylor. No further questions, Your Honor. May this witness be excused.
Do you have any recross, Mr. Mika?
No recross, Your Honor.
Maybe excuse, Coach Taylor. Any other witnesses, Ms. Avey?
Yes, Your Honor, yes, Your Honor, I do plan to read from Exhibit 18, which has been pre-admitted in today's trial. And that will include just brief paragraphs. So here's the opinion that I've reached in this case based on a reasonable degree of professional.
Ms. Avey, could you read into the record, please, where we are in line?
Absolutely, Your Honor. We're Exhibit 18, page 2, line, the pages are not lined, but starting on the second full paragraph, starting with here is. Here's the opinion that I've reached in this case based on a reasonable degree of professional and medical certainty. Rory Street's death was caused, at least in part, by the use of cocaine. Moving down to the fourth full paragraph on page 2 of Exhibit 18, starting with according to the toxicology report, when Rory Street's blood was drawn and tested at approximately 19:30 hours on September 8th, 2018, it tested positive for 60 nanograms per milliliter of cocaine. Going to the last paragraph on page 2 of Exhibit 18, starting with cocaine use. Cocaine use can ultimately lead to cardiac arrhythmia, heart attacks, cerebral hemorrhage, or stroke, and heart failure. Additionally, cocaine use can induce hypothermia, which lowers the threshold for heat stroke because it inhibits the body's natural cooling process by causing vasoconstriction in the extremities, which keeps most of the blood supply internal. Moving to page 3, paragraph 1 of Exhibit 18. Dr. McConaughey describes the following symptoms for Rory Street on the day in question: struggling, unusually pale, feeling funny, complained of chest pain, hands on her hips, breathing heavy, groaning, twitching, and convulsing. Many of these symptoms are consistent with cocaine use. Starting with the second paragraph on page 3, additionally, the autopsy report in this case indicates that Rory Street's heart showed signs of myocarditis, which is an inflammation or swelling of the heart muscle. Switching to the last sentence in paragraph 2 of page 3, myocarditis is one of the physical symptoms associated with cocaine use, which means this finding is also consistent with cocaine use. Third paragraph on page 3 of Exhibit 18, it is true that the amount of cocaine found in Rory Street's system was nominal, only 60 nanograms per milliliter. However, Rory Street's blood was drawn long after her death and potentially even longer after Rory actually ingested the cocaine. Therefore, this test may not represent the actual amount of cocaine that was in Rory Street's blood at the time of the incident or earlier in the day. And it is possible that the amount of cocaine in the system was actually much higher throughout the course of the day leading up to practice. With that, Your Honor, defense rests. And we would renew our motion we would renew our pretrial motion for a judgment as a matter of law pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure Rule 50.
Okay. Before I roll on that, did you have any form of cross of this deposition testimony?
No, Your Honor, as these are both pre-admitted into evidence, I trust that they're both in front of you for the sake of closing argument.
Okay. All right. I am going to deny the motion 50. And
Yes.
we will go ahead and get started with closing. I will give you guys about 2 minutes to get ready for that, and that will allow me to total up your times, and I'll let you know how much time you have for closing.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Meinkoff, you have 14 minutes left, including rebuttal. And Miss AV, are you there?
I'm so sorry, Your Honor. Yes, I am.
You have 12 minutes left.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Meinkoff, whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Something was different about Rory that day. That's something we've heard time and time again throughout trial today. You heard it from Rory's close friend and teammate that on September 7th, 2018, Rory wasn't performing up to standard. She was starting to look sweaty, fatigued. She was really struggling. She was complaining about chest pains. You heard it even from the defendant, Coach Taylor, that at starting this practice, Rory seemed different. She seemed like she wasn't giving it her all. Now, Coach Taylor wants to mention to you that this is, not, something unreasonable to be expected. This player has played in this August heat and September heat repeatedly for years. And so why shouldn't it be natural to discipline a little bit of goofing off by sending them to run more cardio? But let's think about what that means, Your Honor. What that means is that Coach Taylor recognized that a player wasn't performing up to their A game, that a player was beginning to slow down, was beginning to exhibit signs of disorientation. Coach Taylor mentioned that Rory wasn't able to find her position on the field, was having trouble listening and responding. And the result of that wasn't to ask her if she was okay. It wasn't to pause for a water break. It wasn't to take a break in the practice so that Rory could go inside and cool off a little. No, the response to that was go run Burma Road. Start running. Start running an excruciating cardio regimen until I tell you to stop. Coach Taylor wants you to believe that, well, this has been a tradition. This has been going on for years and years and years. And it's unreasonable to think that anyone would expect that this would cause someone to have the conditions of heat stroke or heat exhaustion. But members of the jury, it is precisely because this coach has that amount of experience with running Burma Road that she should have known the dangers exposed in it. She ran it herself, and she was there that day when she experienced the 105-degree temperatures as Rory began running back and forth. But still, this amount of discipline, well, that just wasn't cutting it. Rory was still running slowly, still falling behind. And I want to talk about how Coach Taylor described off. But did she ever talk about Rory making jokes? Doing anything funny? Anyone laughing? No, what you had described to you was that this student athlete just wasn't performing up to their A game. That's goofing off in Coach Taylor's book, and that deserves discipline even higher than running Burma Road. That required a discipline that no one on the team had ever seen before, no one's ever heard about. Coach Taylor assembled her students in a line and began running these slide tackle drills. Now I know, a slide tackle, that's something that happens in soccer. But as you heard from Coach Taylor herself, it doesn't happen like this. This drill was new, and this was the first time it had been implemented. And it was being implemented on a young student athlete who already was showing signs of struggling, who had just gotten done running an intense cardio regimen. Coach Taylor assembled a firing squad of 15 students who one by one charged at Rory Street, knocked her to the ground, and then Coach Taylor yanked her back up, and the whole thing started over again. And it went on and on and on until Rory Street literally couldn't, fell to the ground, began convulsing, and died. Now, the defense wants to ask you this question. Did Coach Taylor act reasonably during this conduct? They want to know whether or not performing these routines in 105-degree heat and then sending a student to run intense cardio and then bringing that student immediately back to be repeatedly tackled to the ground when they can tell that something is off with this student, whether or not that was reasonable. Whether or not implementing an entirely new off-the-cuff slide tackling drill in these extreme conditions was reasonable. They also want you to ask whether or not it was Rory's choices that caused her own death. And I know that Rory had cocaine in her system. That's true. No one here is disputing that. What also isn't disputed, as you heard from the defense's own expert report, was that the amount of cocaine in her system was nominal. Now, the expert witness can describe all they want, can ponder about, well, we don't know how much was in her system when she actually took it. But that's important because that means they can't conclude that there was a lie either. And they can talk about possibilities all they want, but possibilities aren't concrete facts. And the concrete facts we have today don't go to describe Rory's actions. They go to describe Coach Taylor's actions. Coach Taylor, who sent her team to practice scrimmages in the 105-degree heat for hours. You heard today from one of those students that they can't remember any particular break. They can't remember any moment of respite in there. What they do remember is their close friend starting to sweat profusely, starting to complain about chest pains. They remember their close friend being dragged back to the scrimmage yard to be tackled repeatedly. None of those were Rory's actions. Rory was sent to run Burma Road, and when she slowed down, when she couldn't keep up, when maybe she was acting in a way to slow her heart rate down, she was then disciplined again. Those weren't Rory's actions. Those were the actions of Coach Taylor. You heard here today that Coach Taylor expects toughness. She wants her players to win. And she placed that burden to win over all reasonableness. Just a moment, you're going to be able to deliberate, and we would ask you to review all the pieces of evidence carefully. And at that time, we would ask you to place responsibility on the one coach who saw that something was different, who saw that something was wrong, but whose actions weren't to ask if this student was okay, wasn't to call for breaks, but was instead to repeatedly discipline a student for what they believed to be goofing off. At that time, we would ask you to hold Coach Reese Taylor responsible for the tragic loss of life in today's case. Thank you.
May I proceed, Your Honor? Your Honor, no one in this room denies that what happened to Rory Street on September 7th, 2018 was a tragedy. And we even understand why her mother has decided to bring forward a lawsuit such as this one, because it's really only natural to want to find someone to blame when something terrible has happened. But in this country, under this system of justice, you don't just get to blame someone. You have to prove that they're responsible and that they're the right person. And as hard as it is to say, and as difficult as it may be for Ms. Street to hear, the evidence today has shown that it was her daughter's choices that she made that day before practice that led to this entire event, not Coach Taylor's. Today, you must decide if Coach Taylor will be held responsible for Rory's actions. But today, we're confident that after all the evidence has come forward, that you've seen that Coach Taylor isn't responsible, because the plaintiff has failed to establish the necessary elements to meet their burden today: duty, breach, causation, including foreseeability. And that is because instead, the evidence has shown two things. First, that Coach Taylor acted reasonably under the circumstances. And second, that it was Rory's choices that day that caused her own death. So let's talk about that first point, that the evidence has shown that Coach Taylor's actions were reasonable under the circumstances. Now, no one here today has denied that Coach Taylor was clearly under a duty of care towards her players, and no one will deny that. Parents and students expect that when they go to a field or a baseball diamond, that their coach is going to take care of them and that their coach is going to protect them. And Coach Taylor has that same expectation for herself. So really what this comes down to in this case is whether or not there was a breach of that duty. And today, as you just heard, opposing counsel says that there was clear breach because of Burma Road and because of the slide tackling drill. Those are the two that they focus on as being a breach of Coach Taylor's duty. But in order to breach your duty of care, you have to do something that a reasonable person in your position wouldn't do. And what did we hear today, Your Honor? We heard that for 35 years, to the point where Coach Taylor herself and even Rory Street's own mother, Jordan Street, when they were students at Waco High School, would run Burma Road. So you can't even get closer to another person in Coach Taylor's position, coaching in Waco, Texas, in September and October in 100-degree weather, and what that other reasonable person would do in her situation. And we heard exactly what they did. The same thing. That is not a breach of Coach Taylor's duty in this case. So that's why Mr. Meinkoff has focused on the slide tackling drill. And it is true. This was the first time that Coach Taylor performed this drill. No one denies that today. But you also heard that the risks that come with slide tackling drills in the coach's experience are broken bones, cleats to the shin, cleats to the hip, maybe a concussion. But seizing on the ground, convulsing, heat exhaustion, dying, none of those things. Coach Taylor hasn't seen or thought or heard or expected any of those things to ever happen. And also, Mr. Meinkoff keeps saying that he was putting the punishment over the protection of Rory, but think about it, Your Honor. Why would Coach Taylor do that? She admits that Rory was one of her star players, if not her star. Opposing counsels talked all about today how Coach Taylor wants to win. So why would she put her star player at risk? Why would she clearly choose something that she thought there's no way that this girl's going to get through it? Why would she put her top athlete, her golden goose, at risk if she is so desperate to win, if that is really all she cares about? That doesn't make any sense. And that's because that's not what happened here. Instead, Burma Road and the slide tackling drill, they were about discipline. And discipline is reasonable in a coach's position. A coach is like a combination of a teacher and a parent. And nobody thinks that it's unreasonable for a teacher to discipline their student or for a parent to discipline their child. And a coach who's coaching physical activity, of course, their discipline is going to involve physical activity. The truth is, most of us have had a coach just like Coach Taylor. And most of us are better for it. So if there are so many other coaches out there that use the exact same tactics, coaches we hear about all the time when we turn on the TV or watch professional sporting events, then how can they say that Coach Taylor's yelling, that Coach Taylor's expectations, that is unreasonable? When there are hundreds of other people out there that are the exact same way. And the reality is, Waco High School wanted her to be that way. They wanted to win. When Mr. Meinkoff read in Jordan Street's deposition today, you heard she was instrumental in getting Coach Taylor hired. She wanted a winner. She wanted someone to push Rory. This was expected. They don't get to have it both ways. They don't get to hire her for these exact tactics and then come back and say, well, we didn't like when she yelled at us. For 6 years, she had this behavior. There are no complaints that have been brought forward today in trial. There's no evidence that this has ever been a problem before. So what was different that day? Rory. As opposing counsel said, everybody has said Rory was different that day. But Rory practiced in 100-degree weather all the time. Rory had been on that soccer field for 4 years. So what was different about Rory that day? The cocaine in her system. And that brings me to the second thing that the evidence has shown, that it was Rory's choices that caused her death that day. Today, the plaintiff had the burden to prove that Coach Taylor's actions proximately caused Rory Street's death. But they didn't meet that burden today, because instead, we brought you a toxicology report that shows exactly what happened to Rory Street that day. We also brought you an expert report that told you exactly what happened to Rory Street that day. When you get to go back into your chambers, Your Honor, and review these expert reports carefully, you'll see that our toxicologist has been qualified as an expert 50 times. He knows what he's doing, but the plaintiff's expert, he's never been qualified. In fact, when you read this report, you'll see that all of Rory's symptoms that day, the fact that Rory's heart muscle was damaged, the fact that Rory had seizures and convulsions, that is all consistent with cocaine inducing a heart problem. But that heart muscle damage, it's not consistent with heat stroke. And you'll see that when you review those expert reports. And since Rory gone and gotten physicals every single year, you know that she didn't have secret heart damage. So where'd that come from? But the plaintiff says you can't trust any of that evidence because there was only a small amount of cocaine in her system. But when you read those reports, no one says that a nominal amount of cocaine, that a small amount isn't enough, because it triggers hypothermia in your body. So when you're out and you're running around in 105-degree weather, or even inside, your body can't regulate what's going on inside. It can't make you sweat. It can't make you shiver. It's no longer there for you. It's no longer there to protect you. And that's what happened to Rory that day, not Coach Taylor. But the main reason that you can be sure, Your Honor, that Coach Taylor's actions did not cause Rory's death is because it wasn't foreseeable. It was not foreseeable to the trainer that stood out at that practice every single day. It wasn't foreseeable to any of the teammates except for Aubrey Saracen, but she didn't tell anybody, and she even says that it came suddenly and that she wasn't expecting it. Coach Taylor didn't know. And the truth is, what it really comes down to is that no one knew that Rory had cocaine in her system that day. So nobody knew what was going to happen when she stepped out on that soccer field. Whether she ran Burma, whether she did slide tackles, whether she was just in the scrimmage, Rory was having issues. And by the plaintiff's own admission, Rory was having issues on the field before she ever ran Burma and before she ever engaged in the slide tackling drill. This wasn't because of the heat. This was because of the cocaine. And you know that because there were two people out on Burma that day, Aubrey Saracen and Rory Street, and only one of them had cocaine in their system, and only one of them had the reaction that Rory did. No one has any pleasure getting up here today and saying that Rory made those choices. But that's what happened. And Coach Taylor should not be held responsible for actions that were not her own. That wouldn't be just. Find her not liable.
Mr. Weincott, you have about 6.5 minutes left.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to start off by just correcting one quick thing about the expert reports that were mentioned. Specifically that the expert report provided to you by us, by Dr. McConaughey, that Dr. McConaughey has never been tendered as an expert, and that's simply not true. When you review the evidence, you can review her CV itself. She's been tendered as an expert 10 separate times. But I'm going to put all that aside for a moment. And Mr. Olson, thank you, but we can put this down. I'm going to put all that aside for a second. I'm going to put aside the fact that we have a medical doctor who concluded that this was due to heat stroke. I want to turn instead and talk about a person in Coach Taylor's position. You heard today about people in Coach Taylor's position. You heard about a seminar of Texas coaches, people exactly in Coach Taylor's position. A seminar that alerted Coach Taylor to the fact that when temperatures rise above 100 degrees, water has to be provided at all times. And sure, water was provided that day. But that in addition to the water, separate from that, there needs to be a break every 15 minutes. There needs to be shade where possible. Those coaches were in Coach Taylor's exact position. And they explained that there needs to be repeated breaks because it is dangerous to be practicing in temperatures this high. You also heard about other students like Jordan Street, who herself ran the Burma Road. And Coach Taylor herself ran Burma Road. But what you didn't hear was that they would run a Burma Road past the point of exhaustion. You didn't hear that immediately after running Burma Road, they would be pulled back to the scrimmage line to do even more drills, let alone drills involving 15 different students slide tackling into you. And as you heard from Coach Taylor herself, there's injuries associated with this. There are injuries such as concussions that can come from this, and that's just a regular slide tackle. That's not exposing a student to a slide 15 times. They also want you to think about how, well, this is just what every coaching person does. But you heard today that that's not true either. The slide tackling maneuver, this was the first time it had been used. It's also the first time that a student, after running the vigorous cardio routine, had been pulled to do that slide tackling maneuver. Yes, coaches train their athletes in the heat sometimes. They also provide them breaks. Coaches and teachers will give them rests and water. What coaches don't do is drive their students past the point of heat exhaustion. And whether or not the cocaine was affecting Rory that day, Coach Taylor saw that something was off. Coach Taylor observed it, and at that moment had an opportunity to ask what was wrong. But instead, she pulled her to Burma Road, had her run even more, continued to notice that this student was exhausted, and then pulled them back for a once-in-a-lifetime slide tackling maneuver. Coaches discipline. They don't literally have their students tackled to death. Hold Coach Taylor responsible for those actions.
Okay. All right, thank you both.